With the equipment that we've looked at so far, human beings could communicate perfectly well. They would have a vocabulary of, say, 50,000 words, and with the clause structure as we've now seen it, and with simple phrases, they could say anything they liked. And yet, that's not what we're left with. We're able to create additional complexity in two ways, and the first of these is through embedding. We can put phrases inside phrases, we can put phrases inside clauses, we've already seen that, and we can put clauses inside clauses, and we haven't really quite looked at that. So let's do a bit of revision. Phrases inside phrases. Well, the process which you may not have thought about much is actually infinite. Let's have a look at the data here. Here's a person. We might, if we wanted to, say, I want you to think of a person. I want you to think that the person is on a seat. The seat is inside the theatre. We can cram all that into a single noun phrase by saying the person on the seat within the theatre. Easy, isn't it? And yet, look at the complexity. We have on the seat within the theatre, within which is within the theatre. And if we wanted to, we could say something about the theatre. We could say the theatre at the other end of town, and so on and so forth. This process of embedding is a kind of Chinese box arrangement, and these brackets show the ends of the boxes. And the process is called recursive, and the property recursion. The reason is that these rules recur. We have an NP at the top, we have another NP somewhere further down, and we have a further NP even further down, each of which is embedded in the other one. So this is a recursive process. It can go on ad infinitum. Human grammars, all human grammars have the property of being recursive. The same thing happens with possessives. Here we have a lead. It's the dog's lead, and the dog is the aunt's dog, and the aunt is my aunt. So we have three possessive phrases, one nesting inside the other, each with a noun phrase inside it. What about clauses inside clauses? Well, here's a sentence. Sally hoped. What did she hope? She hoped that Paul would meet her today. She hoped all of that. Well, what is it? It's a clause because it's got a subject, Paul, and a predicate, would meet her today. So, in this case, hope has a direct object, and the direct object is a clause. Jerry understood something. What did Jerry understand? Why the jury found him guilty. The jury is the subject, found him guilty is the predicate. The underlined piece is itself a clause. So, Jerry understood something. What he understood is the direct object, and again, the direct object is a whole clause. Horace cried. When did he cry? After his dog died. Well, again, his dog died is a clause. It has a subject and a predicate. So, here we have clauses, each of which has its own subject and predicate, sitting inside, embedded within another sentence, and with its own function, either an object or an adverbial in the case of the last sentence. So what are these functions? Well, we've already seen them. This is a direct object. What's this one? The head noun here is expectation. There is an expectation. That Henry would come modifies expectation. These kinds of clause modifiers come particularly where inside a noun we actually have a head verb lurking. Remember, expect is a verb, and expectation, the ATION, turns it into a noun. Well, the verb has certain properties. Someone expects something. So even expectation ends up having, as a modifier, the sort of object that expect would have. And again, notice something we've pointed out repeatedly. The same structure, two different functions. In A, direct object, in B, modifier in a noun phrase. How do we draw these? Well, we're going to suppose that embedded clauses are called S with a little bar next to it, and we'll justify that in a moment. Why? Well, out the front of embedded clauses there's frequently something which used to be called a subordinated conjunction, which we're going to call a complementizer, comp for short. The clause, the subject and predicate bit, actually comes after that. The complementizer introduces the clause. It tells you that it is an embedded clause. And these subordinating conjunctions or complementizers are single words like that, for, whether, whenever, while, and the rest of the clause follows. Alright, what does it look like? Oops, let's go back. What it actually looks like is something like this. The complementizer comes in English to the left, and then the clause, which we have so far called S, short for sentence, but it's actually short for clause, the subject and the predicate come after that. And so from now on you can draw these little S bars. They're not difficult. So what are the functions of embedded clauses? We've already seen a couple of them. Let's see if we can look at the whole lot. Clauses can be subjects. What was it that lowered the price? That weeds had invaded the garden lowered the price. We're talking about the real estate industry here. Don't let your garden get overgrown if you want to sell your house. They can be objects. The agent, the estate agent, knew that weeds had invaded the garden. What did he know? She know? That weeds had invaded the garden. They can be intensive complements. It seemed that weeds had invaded the garden. What was it that seemed? That weeds had invaded the garden. And they can be modifiers of nouns, as we've seen. In that case they're called relative clauses. The garden which was invaded by weeds. In each case we've got a full clause performing a number of different functions.